What's up, guys? Mason the Rock Henderson here, and this is Elementary Season 5, Episode 24, Hurt Me, Hurt You, season finale to finally put the season out of its misery. And, yeah, it's crap, so let's talk about it. So, we finally have the wrap-up for this season. One of the other gangs that Sherlock talked to earlier in this season goes on a killing spree of some of the SPK members, and so they're trying to figure out how to stop this gang war, and then we find out that gang, the head of that gang, his sister was killed, apparently by a member of the SPK, so that's why he's killing all the people of the SPK. The brother of the head of the SPK, who is secretly running everything, he apparently wants to turn himself in so he can turn the SPK in and get immunity for it, because apparently he killed the sister of the head of the other gang, and so that's pretty much it. A lot of things didn't work in this. I'm going to touch on a few that stood out the most, just because if I went into all the detail of all the things that didn't work, we'd be here for a long time. First of all, the fact that the brother is the one that ends up killing the sister. Well, the brother of the head of the SPK. I probably should look up his name so I don't get all these like brother and sister things confused. Tyus Wilcox. That's his name. So, yeah, Tyus is secretly running everything in the SPK. He's, like, running it through his brother, because apparently when his brother first started, he came to him and asked him for help, and so he was like, sure, I'll help you out. And so that's how things got rolling, and from there he just kind of was helping out the SPK behind closed doors, secretly. So we find out later on that apparently he is the one responsible for the death of the sister of the head of the other group, whose name I will not look up because I don't really care that much. And so, of course, we see he turns himself in to get immunity for all the crimes that the SPK committed, so he can turn in all the members of the SPK. He can rat them all out. And at that point, when it happens, Joan is just like, no, he did it. And once she said that, I really truly wanted to believe that she was wrong. But the fact of the matter is, as the episode continued on, it made it more and more obvious that she was right, that he was actually responsible. A couple of reasons why this doesn't work for me. One, he told Sherlock and the captain earlier that he was not responsible, which means he lied straight up to Sherlock's face, and Sherlock couldn't tell. Kind of a problem. The other thing is, the obvious bad guy ends up being the bad guy. Where's the mystery in that? This is still considered a mystery show, right? Sherlock Holmes, the greatest detective, should be taking on mysteries, right? This is not like some sort of like gang violence show, crime show. No, this is supposed to be a mystery show. There's supposed to be actual mysteries here, where you have somebody committed a crime, we don't know who, we have to find clues to figure out who done it. Where was that this episode? Because it wasn't there. It was this one guy, very obviously the bad guy. Apparently he's not being set up. Apparently he's not being friend. No, he did it. That's all you need to know. The Mr. Oh, I'm not the head of a gang, but if I was, I'm so clever by saying this, because nobody's gonna figure it out then. What is that? First of all, I mean, do people actually do that? Police come in to talk to the husband of a woman who was murdered, and he's sitting there and he's got blood all over his hands. So, did you kill your wife? No, of course not. But if I did, do you really think that accusing me in my house is a good idea? Who does that? Who says that and doesn't expect some repercussions? So yeah, that guy's stupid. The other problem that I have with all of this, I'm not, but if I was, is that they can tell. They can clearly tell. The third time, finally, after they accuse him of being the head of the gang, and he starts off, I'm not the head of the gang. Captain Gregson's finally just like, look, drop the charade, alright? If we double pinky promise you, he had to get all sarcastic with him. If we double pinky promise you that we will not arrest you if you admit to being the head of the gang, will you finally man up and admit it? I'm like, thank you. Finally one of the characters in the show says something smart. God, it's been a while. So, Yeah, finally admits to it, but then, like I said, says he didn't do it. Says I didn't kill that woman. We promised never to go to war with that guy because he's crazy. That's not possible. So of course later on down the road, whenever we find out, oh no, that's actually true, Sherlock apparently didn't tell he was lying. And the thing about it is, the Sherlock story in this episode is interesting at first. When you think about it at first, it's like, okay, this is an interesting concept. Because we see that woman is still tormenting Sherlock. We're seeing that something's going on with him. He's opening up these boxes after he asks, or he tries to say what all the contents in the box are, and it doesn't even touch him. Like, what is that? Like, I'm confused. How does that work? So anyway, we see something seriously going wrong with him. And finally, at some point, he's talking to the woman, and he admits that he did send the text message to that cop, but he forgot. And I'm like, are they doing something with his mind? Like, is his mind messing up or something? Because that would make so much sense for the rest of this season. And sure enough, they're kind of, but not really. Apparently, he's having some sort of problem with his memory. Like, he's forgetting things. But that's why he was doing the whole box thing. He would put stuff in the box, wrap it up, and then try to see if he could remember what he put in the box, trying to test his memory. And I guess he was having problems. And this woman we saw, apparently it's a figment of his imagination, which, the whole fire thing that started when he threw the chair through the window and all that, at that point I kind of realized, okay, so obviously this woman is not real. I'd had a thought that maybe she wasn't real, but after I saw that, I'm like, okay, so now I know for sure that she's not real. But apparently, I think he said it was his mother, and she was representing the part of his mind that wanted to get better. But couple of things I do have a problem with. First of all, they only say that it's a problem with his memory. I hope they don't go with that. I hope they don't just say, oh yeah, it's just he's forgetting things. That's the only problem he has. Because we've seen this season, he has not been nearly the detective that I think a lot of us are expecting him to be. The greatest detective of all time, Sherlock Holmes, should be an incredible detective. We haven't seen that. We've seen just a regular old detective. So I hope they just go with the thought of, okay, it's not just his memory that was affected. Obviously, that's the one that was affected the most because he was forgetting a lot of stuff. But I hope they also say he was also having some problems with his deductive skills. Because it would explain so much. It would explain the couple cases where he should have been able to figure it out instantly and he didn't. It would explain in this episode how the guy lied to his face and he couldn't tell. I hope they go with that. I hope they go with his mind is just having some problems. Maybe it's going to end up being a tumor and they can just remove it and he'll get back to being the great Sherlock Holmes that we all know. But it's seeming like they're probably going to go with, no, it's just his memory that's been affected. And that's going to be really disappointing. The other problem I do have with this, especially if they end up going with it's just his memory that was affected, there's no build up to this. We didn't see this woman until these final 2 episodes. We didn't think anything was wrong with him. I did, because, obviously he wasn't the greatest detective ever, like he should be. But there was no sort of hint or clue that he was being affected by something. Something seemed wrong. There was no hint throughout the entire season until these final 2 episodes. So, I don't know, it kind of feels like, really, you're just going to drop this on us last minute? I mean, come on, no, that's stupid. That's just trying to throw in some plot twist so you can have a cliffhanger to lead into next season. So, yeah, those are a couple problems that I do have with this, even though if they end up twisting it around to where there's a tumor, it's been affecting his thought process throughout most of the season, it's been very minuscule at first, so he didn't even notice what was going on, and now it's kind of grown to the point where now he's actually physically forgetting things that, he sends a text message, he forgets it. He puts stuff in a box, he forgets that. That's how bad it's gotten now. If they twist it around to that, then it can explain this entire season away. It can say, alright, he wasn't as good as he used to be as a detective, but here's why. It could fix this entire season if they decide to go with that. If they don't, though, this season's a total, complete failure. And as it stands, it's already a failure. Even if they go with the plot twist, it's still a failure in general. But this could fix some problems if they decide to go with that. So that's about it for this episode. I mean, obviously they end up catching Tyus. They find him in some sort of loophole. Of course, his lawyers, they're acting like a scumbag. They have proof. They have DNA in the girl's throat where she bit him, and it's just like the lawyer's still just trying to find some way for him to get out of it. And I'm just like, seriously, just accept the loss, okay? Um, but yeah, I'm still disappointed with this case in general. I mean, it kind of goes back to the rest of the season. I've talked about before how seeing Sherlock Holmes take on gang violence isn't exactly what I want to see. And part of that is because there's really no mystery to it. I tune into the show because they used to do really good mysteries. They used to have some really very what's the word I'm looking for? Complex. Apparently I'm forgetting words too. But they had some very complex mysteries in the show before. Stuff that you really had to think about. You had to find the clues along the way, slowly figuring out who might be responsible. I love that. I love it whenever a show can do that. This season they didn't have it. It was easy cases. It was the obvious bad guy's the obvious bad guy. The clues that they were finding weren't clues we were finding. It was stuff that they did off screen. It's like, I have a plan. They come back and they've got the killer. It's just, I hate that. I don't know. Like it just really frustrates me whenever a mystery show decides to take away the mystery aspect and focus on something else. And the gang violence topic has been the biggest focus this season. So ended on really, really, really low note, and yeah, that about sums up this season in general. I mean, just really poor. Really, really, really poor. It started off with a couple interesting concepts at first. Shinwell wasn't one of my favorite things, but I just remember some of the early episodes still felt like elementary, but as the season went on, it started to drone on. The mysteries started getting less interesting. It started getting less complex, less like mysteries, more like I'm just watching some people solve a case. And that's the biggest failure of the season as a whole, is that it took me out of the show and made me the viewer. And I don't think that's one thing that shows can do from time to time that I feel like is the biggest mistake any TV show can make, is to make the audience member a viewer of the show. Good shows can bring in an audience member and make them a part of the show. Make them feel like they're actually there. Make them feel like the characters are real and they're a part of it. They're watching it and they're there. This show, though, not only did it not make me feel like that, it also kind of isolated me to the point where I'm on the outside of the case watching as they do everything, to the point where I'm not even seeing some of the clues that they find. Like they'll talk about how they're going to review this video or review this or something like that, and they won't tell me about the clue until they've already caught the bad guy and are interrogating him, and are like, oh yeah, by the way, we found this other clue that the audience didn't get to see. It's really disappointing, and I think it just sums up just how bad the season has been. So I'm not really looking forward to next season. I'm really shocked that this got another season, because I mean, I'm looking at the ratings for this season, and they're not as low as they probably should be. Like I've seen a lot of shows that are not good, but not necessarily bad either. Like Bull is one example on CBS. Pretty good show. Fairly solid episodes. Gets around to 7 to 7.5 every episode. Couple broke that and made it to about 8.0. This show, it was above 7.5 for almost every episode. There are a few that drop below it, a few that hit the 7.5, 7.4 range. So, those episodes are probably a lot worse than the Bull episodes, and yet somehow they're higher rating, and yet it doesn't make any sense. So, I don't know, maybe the ratings for the show were high enough to where they managed to eke out another season, but I really thought that compared to the first 4 seasons, these ratings were lower than those. It seemed like that they had dropped off. So maybe it's just my imagination. Maybe enough people are still watching it that they're just like, yeah, we can get another season out of this. All I know is if they want to get better next season, they need to make this a brain tumor that's affected his deductive abilities, bring him back as Sherlock Holmes, the greatest detective that ever lived, and bring us an interesting premise for next season. Bring Moriarty back. Bring us some really good cases. I realize Moriarty will be tough to get because I'm pretty sure, I can't remember her name now, but the actress that plays her is like she's in quite a few movies nowadays, so I realize she's probably busy. But try to bring her back in some sense, whether it's she's in the background the whole time, or give us another like great villain to face off against. Bring us some really good cases, something complex, something, I guess, just making me think back to the Arthur Conan Doyle stories, something like that, where it's just like Sherlock Holmes really has to think hard about this and has to try try to figure this out with all of his abilities, and it's going to take everything he's got. He's up against somebody that's really smart, or maybe some sort of corporation. I don't know, just something that's interesting and grabs my attention. Not this season. This season was boring. It was slow. The cases were dull. The outside story was dull. It leads to a very, very poor season. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on this show, or this episode and this season? Let me know. We can talk about it and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future elementary reviews. I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.